just say your name and then.
Okay, my name? My name is Bob Higgins.
What year were you born?
I was born July 3rd, 1936, which makes me about 45, right? Is that calculate with you?
No, close. Where were you born?
Born in Brooklyn, New York.
And then where did you grow up at? Is that where you grew up at, or did you move anywhere else?
No, I grew up in Brooklyn, and we stayed in the same apartment house. There were 9 of us in the family, 7 kids, and two parents, and we had the same 2-bedroom apartment house in Brooklyn until I left. Just before I was 18, I joined the Navy.
All right. And then what was your neighborhood like when you were a kid?
Well, I'd have to say it was it was an Irish neighborhood, it was an Italian neighborhood, and a Jewish neighborhood. A couple of German families, but there was a mixture. A lot of kids because we had a lot of apartments. We lived in this 4-story apartment house, so there was a lot of apartments. So there was a lot of people on each block. So there was a lot of kids, a lot of different ages, the categories, the group I was in, and then there was the next group, teenagers, then there was the older guys that were in the bigger team, so there was always the groups in the neighborhood. Very, very busy neighborhood, very, very full of people in Brooklyn at the time.
So does that mean that your schools were really big then? Like, how were your schools back then?
The schools? Well, the schools, yeah, there was public school, what they call we used to call them PS, what was it, PS 217, and I remember, was the public school. Then I went to St. Rosalima, which was a Catholic grammar school, and the church, it was St. Rosalima Church, and there was a lot of church schools and a lot of public schools spread out through Brooklyn. So whatever neighborhood you was in is where you went to that particular school. I went to a parochial school.
All right. And what challenges did you face at that school?
One of the biggest challenges was, I guess, of course, learning, of course, being a good student, passing your test and getting good grades. But the hard part was we had in that school was brothers, they called them brothers, and sisters, like the nuns. The nuns taught the girls, and the brothers taught the boys. They had 2 separate parts in the school. And again, it was a 4-story building. And the brothers were very hard, very, very, very demanding. You couldn't joke around in class. You come into class, you paid attention. If the brother was doing something and you were out of order, then you lost your place and you had to go stand in the back of the class, or stand in the corner or whatever. So there was a lot of discipline in the parochial schools way back then. This is, naturally many, many years ago, so it changed quite a bit.
What kind of discipline did they have? I'm just curious.
Well, I'll tell you one incident, and I was dumb enough to have a balloon that the brother was writing on the blackboard, and I had a balloon, and I was blowing it up and letting the air out of it, and everybody was watching, and I was blowing it, and it broke. Boom! The brother turned around. What was that? And I was just like, I don't want, oh gosh. So, well, he said, "Who did that?" And why should I cop out to doing it? I'm going to get in trouble. So he asked the first row was the smartest guy in the class. Okay, so the balloon broke, and the brother turned around and looked, and he's wearing this cape thing looking thing, and long. And he said to the fellow in the first row, "Who broke the balloon?" And he was scared to death to say who broke the balloon, because he knew I did it. So he said, "Now, George," or whatever his name was, "George, who broke the balloon? Where did that come from? Or where did that sound come from?" So he wouldn't, he was scared to death. He was, I like that. So I said, I raised my hand, I said, I did. I said, "Come up here." So I went up to the front of the classroom. He took the pointer, you know what the pointer is, pointer on the board. Hold your hands out 5 times on this side and 5 times on that side. Whack, whack. And they were just, that was my punishment for it. So they were strict.
Yeah.
The question, well, were they strict? So, but other than that, we had recess, we had sports, we had stuff. I was a boxer, so I boxed all the way through grammar school,
That's
all
awesome.
the way through it every
That's
year. So it was an experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when did you get your first job? Was it in high school or?
No, actually, my first job was in the neighborhood in Brooklyn at 9.5.
Oh dang.
9.5, I went to work at a butcher shop, right on Avenue H there, right? We lived on Avenue H and 13th Street, right there. And it was a butcher shop owned by Bert Baum, Jewish, not Jewish, he was from Germany. And I went delivering meat and eggs and you name it, what a few canned goods and so on from the butcher shop all over Brooklyn. That was my first job.
That's awesome.
And I stayed there for several years, and then I went to work for Woolworths long before I finished grammar school. And then when I finished grammar school, of course, I went to work for the Woolworth Company, FW Woolworth Company. I don't know if they're still around big time. It's like Kmart and so on, smaller. And I worked there until I went in the Navy. I worked at that place until I was 18, just turning 18.
That's awesome. So, what were your teenage years like? If you could put it into like a short, like paragraph, I guess. I don't know, like.
Okay, I was so looking back and thinking about the teenage years today compared to then. Looking back, it was sports. We had a lot of sports in the neighborhood. Of course, again, it was a crowded neighborhood. So we always had ball teams. We played stickball. We skated with skates, and we ice skated in the winter if there was ice on the ground. We played hockey. I was a gymnast, so I was always at the gym working out. And later on, I started throwing a javelin, but that was after way late, much 25 years later. But grammar school, it was all the other sports, baseball and some football on the street and all. So we were busy, school and sports and games, and that's it. We didn't have any cell phones, so we spent our time on the street, with the other kids playing games, sports mostly, and then just having a lot of fun.
What was stickball? I heard you say that.
Stickball was you took the street and you used this in the one section. This is home plate, and you used the corner sewer. We called them sewers, and across the street was third base, and second base was another sewer manhole way back. So you made it kind of a diamond, and we played. Somebody would take the ball and throw it in on a bounce, and you'd have a broom. A broom, that was that was your bat, and you'd whack what's called a Spalding. I think they have them around still. A Spalding it's about the size of a tennis ball, but without the fuzz. And you'd whack that thing, and you'd run to the bases, and that's stickball. It was just like baseball, but it was stickball. A lot of fun, big games, big hits. Broke some windows. Whack through a window, and the palm everybody scatter. It was really fun.
Well, did you have a lot of kids in your street that you played with?
A lot of kids?
Yeah, that you played with?
Oh yeah, it was the neighborhood was loaded with guys. I mean, I had you had your little clique group, 6, 8, 10 guys was the main guys, but then you had other guys that come in from other neighborhoods. But usually it was 8 to 10, 12 guys in the neighborhood. Your age that you played. You played handball against the wall.
That's awesome.
Apartment house wall. You played stickball. You skated. You played hockey. You played slackball. I have to explain all that stuff. There's a bunch of little games that we played then.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wish it was still like that.
Yeah, tossing coins against the wall, pennies, and see who could get closest to the wall. And you'd win, pennies. So you'd walk away with 15 cents, and you thought,
So fast forward a little bit. How did you meet Betty? Just curious.
When I got out of the Navy, I went, it's a long story there, but I got out of the Navy and left Brooklyn and came to California and stayed with my aunt in Riverside for a while until I was able to get enough money together to get an apartment house. My brother and I, we were staying with my aunt, so we got an apartment house. And there was a church in Riverside that I was going to, that my aunt went to, and I saw Betty at the church one day. This is 57 years ago. We're going to be 58, married, and I saw her, and I said to my either my brother or my cousin who was ever with me. I said, I'd marry that girl tomorrow if she would let me. And that's how we met. And then I met her a couple of times later at some dinner or something, and I saw her again at breakfast or something, some gathering. And then I think her girlfriend had a party, and I went and met her. So we got together and we started dating then. That was way back.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
But I saw her and I fell in love with her right away.
Awesome.
Never even said anything to her. Wasn't that cool?
Yeah, that is pretty cool. It's funny how you said that and then it ended up happening.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so what major wars or conflicts do you remember throughout the years? Like big wars or conflicts that you remember the most?
Oh, well, I got into service in the Navy at the tail end of the Korean War. Of course, the other wars I remember with, I remember very specifically World War II and all growing up, where we didn't have the food. We had a family of 7 kids and we didn't have money. I was eating ketchup sandwiches. Get a bread and a little ketchup on it. That was lunch because we didn't have any money. We were really poor. There was no food stamps at the time, none of that welfare, nothing. So it was kind of rough. And then I went in the Navy at the end of the Korean War, and I experienced just the tail end of the Korean War. So that makes me a veteran because I was in during the time of the Korean War. And of course, Vietnam came after that and so on. But the wars, again, there were so many of them going back to the Civil War and way before. So it's sad that we still have the necessity for war, which we're in now. Basically, we're at war now.
What were some big things that you remembered about the wars? Like some main things that you remember from?
About the wars?
Yeah,
well, of course,
events.
Pearl Harbor. I don't think you could be walking on the planet Earth without hearing about Pearl Harbor and the disaster that took place. And then, of course, all the other things, Iwo Jima, and all the big events that took place over the years. And, of course, Hiroshima, when the atom bomb was used for the first time. And so there was always, but you have to remember that the news came to you not the way it is today, instantaneously. Boom, there's the news, and it happened 10 minutes ago. It was always days later. It was the mail, and it was different things. You didn't get the news. This happened last week. So because of technology and electronics, everything is 100% different. Now, we know what's happening in Iran right now. Right now we know. We didn't know then. So that was a big difference. Communication and the result of it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you told me what jobs you had already. So what did your jobs teach you?
My jobs teach me?
Yeah.
Well, from the very beginning, the job at the grocery store, at the butcher shop was, if you delivered it good and it wasn't broken or something, you got a good tip. So being efficient was the first thing I learned. And I was cutting meat and stuff later on as I got a little older. I was cutting meat and pulling chickens apart, and it was a whole different time then. And I learned that hard work. And then I went to work for Woolworths, and the people at Woolworths put me right away into the jobs I never had. For example, I showed a little interest in design, so he was having me put windows in at the Woolworth store, putting the windows, we call them the windows, and whether it was clothing or what. And every job I've ever had, I try and pass on to those that are thinking about their careers or what they're going to do, is if you work harder than the guy next to you, you're going to go further than him. That happened in the Navy. I went aboard that ship and I was painting and cleaning floors and mopping, and it was work. I was on a real working vessel. And I was walking up looking at all the time the guys up on the signal bridge on this ship, 365-foot ship, cargo ship basically, and they're holding coffee and they're looking down at us with a coffee cup and thinking, I want to do that. So what did I do right away is I started with correspondence courses. Passed them, took the test, got another rate as soon as I could, applied for the correspondence course again, took the test, passed the test, studied. Other guys were watching movies, You know, and at night after the work, I was up working, studying. I was always, and I got off the deck force in 10 months. And I was up there, I made second class. I mean, in 3 years, I made second class petty officer. And there I was standing around with a coffee cup when I got off the ship. And because I was already rated with a second class petty officer. But it took hard work, a lot of studying, and working harder than everybody else. It was just my nature to say. And I think I learned that from my dad he said, you work hard, you'll never be sorry. Work hard and learn the job and do it better than everybody else. So that was, it stuck to my head. So I would say that's one of the things, work hard, be efficient, honest, and do the best job you can, and you'll get promoted. So that's my philosophy.
All right. Well, this is a good one. So, if there's anything, or is there anything that you wish you had done differently in life? Why?
Yes and no. That's a yes and it's a no. I don't on one foot and a black sock on the other foot. That's a mistake. You didn't have lighting or anything. But a choice is a different thing. People say, oh, I made a mistake. No, you didn't make a mistake. You made a bad choice when you took and went and did this or did that. I did some things wrong, of course, sure. But I look back thinking I made pretty good choices along the way. I don't regret.
That's good.
I regret some things, but not to the degree where I'd have to go hide, and vanish from the earth or something,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not like you're, okay. So, another question is, how has America changed in your lifetime? One big way it's changed.
Well, there's a lot of personal things there, but how it's changed, I think, and this is again my opinion, and it's based on what's happening in the world. I think that the world, forget politics, forget what party you're with. I think liberalness has damaged our society immensely. Because when people say I can do anything I want because I have that choice, it's my life, I can do anything I want. Well, if it's affecting other people in a wrong, negative way, you shouldn't. You can't yell fire in a theater. You've heard that, that expression. Sure, I wanted to yell fire and see everybody wrong, but this is wrong, you can't do it. So we have freedom of speech, but it has to have control. You have to be responsible for what you say and do. However, the other way it's changed is technology. The technology today is fascinating in a lot of ways, and it's bad in a lot of ways. People are getting into your bank accounts, and there's what do you call it, when they get into your phones and you hacking, and gee, there's things happening today that never happened because that wasn't a factor. The electronic part was not a factor. It is, and it has some great things to it, but it's also a lot of negatives. So I think we ought to go back to some of the things that we did way back, and that was respect your country and what it stands for.
Mm-hmm. And then with that, how has the world changed in your lifetime? Not just America, but like the whole world.
The whole world, again, is influenced by this. It used to be, here's London and all the European countries, right? Over here is all the European countries, and way over here is United States, and down here South America and so on. And you got Alaska and all that stuff, and it just went like this. It's all together. Everything is, what's happening in Bangladesh right this minute if you want to just turn on your radio or turn on your television and so on. So the world has changed, and the world has gotten, again, just my personal view, more and more towards what we're running. One of the candidates is running for socialism. It won't work. It just will not work.
Mm-hmm.